Branded mad to steal her fortune, she was banished, until the Duke exposed the lie before London. The rain fell mercilessly upon the glass dome of the Royal Gallery, a fitting accompaniment to the hushed whispers that circulated like poison throughout the assembly. Lady Lyria Thornwyke stood frozen beneath the central chandelier, the gaslight casting harsh shadows across her pale features. The murmurs had ceased momentarily, a silence far more damning than any accusation. 100 pairs of eyes fixed upon her, some curious, others gleeful, but none kind. "I said the physician's report is quite clear," Lady Marwen repeated, her voice carrying the practiced concern of a devoted stepmother. She held aloft a sealed document, its red wax still glistening. "Our dear Lyria's mind has fragmented. The episodes have become unpredictable." Lyria's fingers tightened around the copper wire twist, her father's last invention, concealed within her palm. "That report is a fabrication," she declared, her voice steadier than her racing heart. "I am of sound mind, as anyone who truly knows me can attest." But who truly knew her? The ton exchanged glances, fans fluttered nervously, and not one voice rose in her defense. Lord Pembridge cleared his throat. "Lady Marwen, these accusations are most extraordinary. The Thornwyke fortune is substantial, perhaps a second opinion." "3 physicians have confirmed it," Lady Marwen interjected swiftly. "My concern is solely for Lyria's well-being and the protection of her inheritance until, if ever, she recovers." "Until she recovers," echoed the Duke of Gravenwell, from the shadows where he had been observing. The crowd parted as Calum Hartwell stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "A convenient arrangement for the interim guardian, is it not?" The gaslight flickered, casting his sharp features into stark relief. Whispers travelled across the gallery anew. The Duke of Gravenwell rarely spoke at such gatherings, and never without purpose. "Your Grace," Lady Marwen curtsied, composure briefly disturbed, "I fail to see how this concerns you." "Justice concerns every gentleman, madam." His grey eyes settled on Lyria, assessing rather than condemning, particularly when a lady is to be confined without proper representation. Lyria lifted her gaze to meet his, a desperate hope kindling within her chest. "Your Grace, I implore you." "The girl is clearly distressed," interjected Dr. Whitmore, stepping forward with practiced authority. "See how she clutches that bit of metal. An obsession, one of many symptoms. The delusions center around her late father's work. She believes conspirators seek to steal his inventions." Lyria's voice rose. "Because they do. My father's patents." "There, you see." Lady Marwen's tone dripped with synthetic sympathy. "These paranoid fantasies have consumed her. The Thornwyke estate and business affairs cannot remain in such unstable hands." "I am not mad." Lyria's declaration echoed through the gallery, followed by a horrified silence. The outburst had merely confirmed the whispers. "This display settles the matter," pronounced Lord Pembridge, shaking his head. "For her own safety, Lady Lyria should indeed be placed under proper care and supervision." Tears of frustration burned in Lyria's eyes as Lady Marwen's hand clasped firmly around her wrist. The copper wire dug into her palm, the last remnant of her father's trust in her capabilities. "The carriage awaits," Lady Marwen announced. "We shall remove to Thornwyke Hall immediately, where Lyria will receive the specialized care her condition demands." As she was led toward the doors, Lyria caught the Duke of Gravenwell's gaze once more. Unlike the others, he had not averted his eyes in embarrassment or revulsion. Instead, he watched with a stillness that suggested not disinterest, but calculation. "This matter is not concluded," he stated, voice carrying through the hushed gallery. Lady Marwen's smile remained fixed. "Your concern is noted, Your Grace. However, the documentation is in order. The law is quite clear regarding those deemed unstable." "Indeed," the Duke replied. "The law is clear. But truth, Lady Marwen, truth has a way of emerging despite our most elaborate efforts to contain it." A chill swept through the assembly, though whether from his words or the draft that followed as the doors opened, none could say with certainty. "Calm, Lyria," Lady Marwen commanded, her grip tightening. The last thing Lyria saw before being ushered into the damp London night was the Duke's unwavering gaze, a single point of focus in a world rapidly dissolving around her. The copper wire remained clutched in her trembling hand, a talisman, a memory, and perhaps, though she dared not hope too fervently, the key to her salvation. 3 months of isolation rendered Thornwyke Hall's north wing almost unrecognizable to Lyria. What once had been her sanctuary, her father's private laboratory and adjoining chambers, now served as her prison. The tall windows, previously sources of inspiration and light, had been secured with iron crossbars, transforming the space into an elegant cage. "Your tonic, my lady," Soren announced quietly, placing a silver tray on the small table beside her. Lyria glanced at the amber liquid in the crystal glass, a familiar bitter scent rising from its surface. "The same concoction that leaves me unable to string together coherent thoughts for hours afterward?" she inquired, her voice carrying the cultivated calm she had perfected during her confinement. The young servant shifted uncomfortably. "Dr. Whitmore insists it will calm your episodes." "Episodes I have never experienced," she replied, turning her gaze back to the rain-streaked window. "Tell me, Soren, do I appear mad to you?" The boy looked stricken. "It is not my place to—" "Of course not. No one's place includes honesty anymore." She sighed, fingering the copper wire she now wore wrapped around her wrist. "You may inform Lady Marwen I have taken the tonic, as always. But, my lady, pour it into the potted fern as you have done these past weeks." A faint smile touched her lips at his startled expression. "Did you think I hadn't noticed your kindness? The plant seems to be thriving, at least." Color rose in Soren's cheeks. "If she discovers—" "She will not unless someone informs her." Lyria rose gracefully, approaching the window where raindrops traced patterns like tears upon the glass. "Has there been any correspondence for me?" Soren lowered his voice. "None permitted through, my lady. But there have been inquiries." Her heart quickened. "From whom?" "I am not certain." Lady Marwen was most displeased. "She instructed that should anyone call regarding your condition, they are to be informed you are too unstable for visitors." Hope fluttered like a trapped bird within her chest. Someone remembered her existence. Someone questioned the narrative of her madness. "There is another matter," Soren continued hesitantly. "The Duke of Gravenwell arrives tomorrow." Lyria turned sharply. "Here? At Thornwyke Hall?" "Yes, my lady. Something regarding property boundaries and water rights. Lady Marwen has been in quite a state preparing for his visit." A laugh escaped her, the first in months, though it carried more irony than mirth. "The formidable Duke concerns himself with property lines? How extraordinarily convenient." "I don't understand." "Nor should you," she replied, suddenly wary of saying too much. Walls in Thornwyke Hall had developed keen ears since her father's death. The sound of approaching footsteps in the corridor silenced them both. Soren hastily grabbed the glass and emptied its contents into the fern, before placing it back on the tray. "Remember," Lady Marwen's voice carried from beyond the door, "the north wing is undergoing extensive renovations. Quite unsafe for visitors. His Grace has no reason to venture there." "Of course, my lady," came the butler's deferential response. Lyria's fingers wrapped around the copper wire at her wrist, its familiar texture grounding her. Appearances would be maintained, the mad daughter hidden away while the grieving stepmother played hostess to one of England's most powerful dukes. "Soren," she whispered as the footsteps receded, "if you could somehow ensure the Duke becomes aware of the renovations in this wing." The servant's eyes widened in understanding. "It would be most unfortunate if I were to misdirect his Grace while showing him to his chambers." "Most unfortunate indeed," Lyria agreed, a spark of her old spirit returning. One never knows when a duke might take a wrong turn in an unfamiliar house. When Soren had departed, Lyria pressed her forehead against the cold window glass, watching raindrops race toward oblivion. She had stopped believing in salvation until this moment. Now, a dangerous hope flickered within her. Dangerous because hope destroyed made madness a possibility, not merely a convenient diagnosis. "Father," she whispered, twisting the copper wire between her fingers, "guide his steps tomorrow. Let him see what others have refused to see." Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the glass like impatient fingers waiting for a door to open. The Duke of Gravenwell was not a man who left matters to chance. Standing beside his rain-speckled carriage, Calum observed Thornwyke Hall with the practiced eye of one who had dismantled many facades. The imposing manor revealed itself gradually through the morning mist, a structure of contradictions, much like the case that had drawn him here. "Dreary place, isn't it, Your Grace?" remarked his secretary, arranging papers within a leather portfolio. "Revealing," Calum corrected, noting the contrast between the meticulously maintained front gardens and the neglected east wing, where ivy consumed stonework like a slow hunger. "Properties, like people, Mr. Bennett, speak volumes when they believe no one is listening." The gravel crunched beneath their boots as they approached the entrance where Lady Marwen awaited, a vision of practiced mourning in black silk and carefully arranged concern. "Your Grace," she curtsied deeply, "Thornwyke Hall is honoured by your presence." Lady Marwen, his bow was precise, neither warm nor overtly cold. I trust my unexpected business has not caused undue inconvenience. Not at all. Her smile remained fixed as she led them into the grand foyer, though I confess surprise that such minor property matters would command the attention of a duke rather than your solicitors. I prefer first-hand observations in all matters of consequence, he replied, his gaze sweeping the entrance hall, noting the family portraits, including one of a younger Lyria Thornwyke, whose intelligent eyes seemed to follow him, particularly when they concern boundaries. If Lady Marwen detected the double meaning in his words, she concealed it admirably. Refreshments await in the morning room. After your journey, perhaps. Actually, Calum interrupted smoothly, I should prefer to inspect the property lines in question while daylight permits. The rain has cleared momentarily. Displeasure flickered across her features before disappearing beneath practiced cordiality. Of course, though the grounds are quite muddy. Perhaps I might summon the groundskeeper to guide. I have brought appropriate footwear, madam, he stated firmly, and Mr. Bennet has the survey documents. We shall manage admirably. Outside, as they trudged along the southern perimeter, where a stream marked the boundary between Thornwyke and Gravenwell lands, Bennet leaned closer. The water rights dispute is quite legitimate, Your Grace, but hardly requires your personal attention. The dispute provides necessary cover, Calum replied quietly. What I seek lies within those walls, not along this stream. The lady, then? You believe the rumors of her condition are exaggerated? I believe nothing without evidence. Calum paused, watching the manor's windows as though they might reveal their secrets from a distance. But I find it curious that a woman of reportedly unsound mind managed the Thornwyke business affairs with remarkable acumen until her father's death, after which her mental decline proved most convenient for her stepmother's ambitions. They completed their inspection and returned to the house where Lady Marwen had arranged an elaborate luncheon. Throughout the meal, Calum engaged her in conversation about the estate's management, noting how she skillfully deflected questions regarding specific financial matters. And how fares Lady Lyria? He inquired during a momentary lull, observing how the servants briefly stilled at the mention of her name. Lady Marwen's smile tightened. Her condition remains challenging. The physicians recommend minimal disruption to her routine. A great burden for you to bear alone, Calum remarked, his tone sympathetic while his eyes remained calculating. Perhaps a visit might lift her spirits. Impossible, Lady Marwen replied too quickly. The episodes become violent when she is confronted with unfamiliar faces. For her sake, we maintain strict isolation. Calum noted the young footman, Soren they called him, nearly drop a serving dish at this pronouncement, his expression momentarily betraying something between alarm and indignation. How unfortunate, the Duke commented, deliberately catching the servant's eye. I had hoped to convey my respects. After the meal, Soren was assigned to show the Duke to his chambers. As they ascended the grand staircase, the young man's steps faltered perceptibly. Your chambers are in the west wing, Your Grace, he began, then hesitated. Though I fear I must warn you against exploring the north wing. Lady Marwen has ordered it closed for renovations. Renovations? Calum echoed, noting the emphasis placed on the word. Yes, sir, most extensive renovations. Soren's eyes darted meaningfully toward the corridor that branched to the left. Quite unsafe for any visitors to venture there. I appreciate your concern for my safety, Calum replied, understanding perfectly. One can never be too cautious in unfamiliar surroundings. That night, after the household had retired, Calum moved silently through the darkened corridors of Thornwyke Hall. The north wing beckoned like a challenge, its entrance partially concealed behind a heavy tapestry, its door secured with a newly installed lock that yielded easily to his practiced touch. Beyond lay answers, he was certain. And if his suspicions proved correct, Lady Marwen would soon discover that some lies were too dangerous to maintain, particularly when they captured the interest of a duke with nothing to lose and justice to restore. The north wing of Thornwyke Hall preserved silence like a tomb, but Calum moved through it with the confidence of one accustomed to navigating both darkness and deception. Gaslight sconces remained unlit, moonlight his only guide as he passed rooms shrouded in dustcloths, not the active renovations Lady Marwen had claimed, but deliberate abandonment. A faint melody stopped him mid-stride. Notes from a music box, delicate as frost, emanated from behind a door at the corridor's end. He approached cautiously, listening to the tune falter and restart, as if turned by uncertain hands. No guard stood watch, curious for a woman supposedly prone to violent episodes. The door was secured by two substantial locks, both recently installed. Calum extracted slender tools from his waistcoat pocket, working methodically until each mechanism yielded. The door swung open to reveal not the raving madwoman of Lady Marwen's tales, but Lyria Thornwyke seated calmly by the window. Moonlight silvered her profile as she turned an antique music box in her hands, her expression contemplative rather than disturbed. "Your lock-picking skills exceed those expected of a duke," she observed without turning. "Are all noblemen so accomplished in the art of breaking and entering?" Calum stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind him. Only those with purpose beyond mere property disputes. Now she looked up, her amber eyes sharp with intelligence. The copper wire circled her wrist like a talisman. "Have you come to assess my madness firsthand, Your Grace? I fear I may disappoint your expectations." "I have neither frothed at the mouth nor attempted to tear my hair out since breakfast. I see no madness here," he replied evenly, though one might question the sanity of a society that imprisons women at the convenience of those who covet their fortunes. Her expression softened fractionally. "You believe me." "I believe evidence," he corrected, "and what I've observed since arriving contradicts Lady Marwen's carefully crafted narrative." Lyria set the music box aside and rose with deliberate grace. "If I told you she has been slowly poisoning me with sedatives to create the appearance of instability, would that also align with your observations? It would explain why your meals arrive separately and why young Soren has been diverting your tonics to nourish the vegetation." He gestured to the flourishing fern by the window. A smile ghosted across her lips. "My faithful accomplice. Should you expose this deception, Your Grace, I beg you remember his kindness." "I intend to expose far more than that," Calum stated, his voice hardening. "Your stepmother's orchestrations extend beyond Thornwyke Hall. 3 physicians have certified your instability, all generously compensated for their professional opinions. Without examining me," Lyria added bitterly, "not one has set foot in this room. A grievous oversight I mean to rectify." He stepped closer, studying her with clinical precision. "You understand why I must be certain? Lady Marwen has influential connections. Challenging her requires incontrovertible proof." "Test me however you wish," she responded, lifting her chin. "Quiz me on business matters, mathematics, literature, anything to prove the soundness of my mind." For nearly an hour, Calum presented her with complex scenarios regarding estate management, philosophical dilemmas, and memory exercises. Lyria responded with unwavering clarity and insight, occasionally allowing her natural wit to surface. "Satisfied?" she asked finally. "Or shall I recite Latin verses while standing on one foot?" "Your intellect is evident," he acknowledged. "What remains unclear is why Lady Marwen hasn't simply had you declared permanently incompetent. These ongoing treatments suggest she requires your signature occasionally." Lyria's fingers found the copper wire at her wrist. "My father's final patent. The Thornwyke resonating engine. The designs are incomplete in the company records, deliberately so. He entrusted the final calculations to me alone, encoded in a cipher only I can translate. And Lady Marwen needs this information to capitalize on the invention," Calum concluded, "keeping you alive but compliant. Each time the sedatives clear my system enough for coherence, she presents documents claiming they are routine estate matters requiring my signature." Lyria's expression darkened. "I've refused consistently." Her methods of persuasion grow more desperate. Calum's gaze fell on faint bruising partially concealed by her sleeve. "She will answer for this." "How?" "Her word against mine. And I am mad. Remember?" Bitterness edged her voice. "London society has already accepted the convenient narrative. Then we shall present them with a new one." He moved toward the door, pausing to add, "Prepare yourself, Lady Lyria. 3 days hence, when Lady Marwen travels to her sisters in Hampshire, I shall return to remove you from Thornwyke Hall." "To what end?" she asked, caution tempering hope. "Justice," he stated simply, "and the restoration of your name before all of London." As he reached for the doorknob, she called softly, "Your Grace, why involve yourself in my predicament? What do you stand to gain?" Calum turned back, his expression unreadable in the moonlight. "Perhaps I merely detest seeing brilliance caged by mediocrity and avarice. Or perhaps," she ventured, "you recognize the nature of the prison because you inhabit one of your own making." His silence confirmed her perception. Hanging between them like an unspoken truth, neither was prepared to examine further. 3 days, he repeated finally. "Be ready." As the door closed behind him, Lyria returned to the window, her reflection ghostly against the night-dark glass. For the first time in months, possibility stirred within her. Dangerous, exhilarating. and utterly dependent on a duke whose motives remained as complex as his methods. The following day unfolded with excruciating slowness, as Calum maintained the pretense of his property inspection. Lady Marwen accompanied him throughout the grounds, her carefully cultivated charm never faltering despite his deliberately tedious inquiries into water tables and boundary stones. "I must commend your patience, Lady Marwen," he remarked as they returned to the manor for afternoon tea. "Few would endure such tiresome matters with such grace." "Thornwyke affairs require constant vigilance," she replied, adjusting her lace cuffs with practiced precision, "particularly given our unique circumstances." "Indeed." Calum accepted a cup from the footman. "I understand Lady Lyria managed these affairs quite capably before her decline." A shadow crossed Lady Marwen's features before her smile reasserted itself. "My stepdaughter possessed a certain aptitude for figures, yes. Such a tragedy, her condition. The physicians believe it was triggered by grief over her father's passing." "Curious how grief manifests so conveniently," he observed, watching her knuckles whiten around her teacup. "Convenient, Your Grace." Her voice remained steady, though a flush crept up her neck. "For a woman to lose her faculties precisely when her inheritance reaches its zenith." He sipped his tea, maintaining an expression of casual interest. "Fortune and madness, frequent companions in my experience, though causality often proves challenging to establish." Lady Marwen set down her cup with deliberate care. "If I did not know better, Your Grace, I might interpret your comments as insinuation." "Merely observation, madam. My interest in boundaries extends beyond mere property lines." Their verbal sparring continued throughout dinner, with Calum noting how Lady Marwen directed servants to taste each dish before it reached him, a courtesy not extended to her own plate. The implicit message was clear. She suspected his intentions and had taken precautions. Later, secluded in his chambers, Calum penned 2 letters. The first, addressed to his solicitor in London, contained detailed instructions regarding legal preparations. The second, shorter and encoded, he folded precisely and sealed. When Soren arrived with evening refreshments, Calum engaged him in seemingly innocuous conversation about the household. "I understand Lady Marwen departs for Hampshire soon," he remarked casually. 3 days hence, Your Grace," Soren confirmed, arranging the tea service with careful hands. "Her sister's health requires her attention." "Most commendable." Calum extracted the sealed letter from his inner pocket. "Young man, might I impose upon your discretion? Lady Lyria dropped this volume during her public episode. I've been meaning to return it to her." He presented not a letter, but a small leather-bound book, the sealed message concealed within its pages. Soren's eyes widened momentarily before composing himself. "Of course, Your Grace, though I should mention visitors are forbidden." "Not visitors, merely possessions," Calum corrected smoothly. "I would not presume to intrude upon her privacy." "The book simply belongs in its owner's hands, does it not?" Understanding dawned in the young servant's expression. "Indeed, Your Grace, I shall ensure it reaches her immediately." After Soren's departure, Calum moved to the window overlooking the north wing. A light flickered briefly behind barred windows, acknowledgement of his message received. The first piece of his strategy settled into place. The next morning he announced his imminent departure. "My inspection is complete," he informed Lady Marwen over breakfast. "I shall return to London this afternoon." Relief visibly softened her features. "So soon? I had expected your inquiries might require further days." "I have gathered sufficient information," he replied ambiguously, "though I may return should additional questions arise." "You shall always be welcome at Thornwyke Hall," she assured him, the platitude hollow as their gazes locked in mutual understanding. Neither had deceived the other. They had merely suspended hostilities. As his carriage departed down the gravel drive, Calum cast one final glance toward the north wing. 3 days would determine whether justice could triumph over carefully constructed lies. 3 days before he would either restore Lyria Thornwyke to her rightful place or join her in disgrace should their gambit fail. The carriage, however, travelled only as far as the village of Thornwyke, where Calum took rooms at the local inn under an assumed name. From there, he dispatched Mr. Bennet to London with his instructions, while he maintained discreet surveillance of the hall. That evening a missive arrived from Soren. "The lady received your gift. Seeds planted, awaiting harvest. Monsieur departs as scheduled. The doctor visits tomorrow." Calum's expression darkened at the last line. "Doctor." Whitmore's arrival suggested Lady Marwen was implementing contingencies before her departure. He penned a swift response. Observe the physician's preparations carefully. Note quantities, colors, effects. Lives depend on your attention to detail. As midnight approached, he spread maps of Thornwyke Hall across his table, committing each corridor and stairwell to memory. The manor's architecture would become either their salvation or their prison, depending on how events unfolded over the coming days. 3 days, he murmured, tracing the path from the north wing to the stables. 3 days to unravel what Lady Marwen has spent months constructing. Outside, an unseasonable fog descended, shrouding Thornwyke Hall in grey obscurity, nature itself conspiring to conceal what darkness was about to reveal. Dr. Whitmore arrived at Thornwyke Hall shortly after breakfast, his black medical bag clutched in gloved hands as he followed Lady Marwen through the entrance hall. Soren, dusting the grand staircase, maintained a facade of indifference while straining to catch their conversation. "The episodes have worsened," the physician inquired, his thin lips pursed beneath an equally thin moustache. "Increasingly erratic," Lady Marwen confirmed, her voice carrying deliberate concern. "She speaks of escape, of public vindication. I fear our previous measures have proven insufficient. Paranoid delusions often intensify when unchecked," Whitmore stated with professional certainty. "We must consider stronger sedation until the treatments take permanent hold." They disappeared into Lady Marwen's study, the heavy oak door closing firmly behind them. Soren abandoned all pretense of dusting, pressing his ear against the wood paneling. Inside, Lady Marwen paced before the fireplace while Whitmore arranged vials on her desk. "I depart tomorrow," she stated tersely. "I cannot risk her becoming lucid enough to communicate with servants or, God forbid, send messages beyond these walls." Whitmore lifted a small amber bottle, liquid sloshing darkly within. "This tincture will render her compliant for the duration of your absence. 3 drops in her evening tea will suppress coherent thought while maintaining basic function, and the potential consequences of extended use." The physician hesitated fractionally. Prolonged administration may lead to lasting cognitive effects. Lady Marwen's lips curved in cold satisfaction. Ensuring her permanent incompetence would simplify matters considerably. The court would have no choice but to grant me full control of the Thornwyke assets. "A convenient medical outcome," Whitmore agreed, adding coldly, "though it would require additional compensation for the attendant risks to my professional reputation. Your discretion has always been generously rewarded, Doctor." She lifted a decanter of sherry. "A toast to our continued arrangement?" Outside the study, Soren withdrew silently, clutching the information like a physical weight. He hurried through the servants' corridor, emerging in the kitchen gardens where he scrawled a hasty note. "Amber tincture prepared, intended to create permanent damage. Administered tonight. Must act immediately." He dispatched a stable boy to the village with the message concealed in a basket of vegetables destined for the inn. The boy returned an hour later, slipping Soren a folded response from beneath his cap. Plans accelerated. Midnight. Ensure north window unlatched. Destroy this message. When evening fell, Soren approached the north wing with Lyria's dinner tray, his heart pounding beneath his livery. Dr. Whitmore himself stood outside her door, Lady Marwen at his side. "I shall administer the tonic personally," the physician announced, producing a small vial from his waistcoat pocket. Soren stepped forward. "Begging your pardon, sir, but the lady has refused to take her medicine from anyone but me these past weeks." Lady Marwen's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Is that so?" "She becomes agitated otherwise," Soren explained, lowering his gaze subserviently. "Screams that she's being poisoned. Makes a terrible commotion." Whitmore considered this. "We cannot risk alerting the household with her ravings." "Very well, boy. 3 drops in her tea, no more, no less. I shall observe through the door panel to ensure compliance." Soren nodded, accepting the vial with steady hands that belied his internal turmoil. He entered Lyria's chambers, setting the tray carefully on the small table beside her armchair. She sat rigidly, her expression betraying nothing as Whitmore peered through the small observation panel. "Your evening meal, my lady," Soren announced formally, "and your tonic as prescribed." Lyria's eyes flicked briefly to the door panel, then back to Soren's face. "How thoughtful," she replied, voice carefully modulated. "You may administer it." With his back partially shielding his actions from observation, Soren uncorked the vial. He tilted it over the teacup, allowing 3 drops to fall, not into the tea, but onto his own sleeve cuff, which momentarily dipped near the liquid's surface. "There," he said, louder than necessary. "All prepared, my lady. Please drink while it's warm." Lyria lifted the cup to her lips, tilting it without allowing the liquid to touch her mouth. After a convincing pause, she returned the cup to its saucer, half its contents seemingly consumed. "Most cooperative," Whitmore commented from the doorway. "Continue with the remainder of the dose in 1 hour. I shall return to check her condition before retiring." When the physician and Lady Marwen had departed, Soren leaned close to whisper, "Plans have changed. The Duke comes tonight rather than tomorrow. The tincture they've prepared, it's meant to cause permanent harm." Lyria's composed facade cracked slightly, fear flickering across her features. "Tonight? But I haven't prepared the—" "There's no time," Soren interrupted urgently. "Leave everything except what you absolutely cannot part with. He'll come at midnight. Keep the north window unlatched." Later, as the household settled into evening routines, Dr. Whitmore returned to find Lyria apparently drowsy from the first dose of tincture. Satisfied with her seemingly sedated state, he instructed Soren to administer the second portion and left to report to Lady Marwen. In the darkness of her chambers, Lyria waited, the copper wire twist clutched tightly in her palm. Beyond her window, fog embraced Thornwyke Hall, blurring boundaries between earth and sky. The grandfather clock in the entrance hall chimed 11, each resonant note marking time's steady progression toward either liberation or catastrophe. She had secured her father's final notes, encoded in a cipher of their creation, within her undergarments. Everything else, every comfort, every possession, she would abandon to escape the slow poisoning of both body and mind. The midnight hour approached with excruciating slowness, as Lyria stood vigilant by the unlatched window, watching fog swirl against glass like spectral fingers beckoning her toward freedom. Her breath fogged the pain in rhythm with her racing heart as she whispered, "Come, Your Grace, come before they take what remains of my mind." The midnight bell had barely faded when a shadow detached itself from the fog-shrouded garden below. Calum moved with practiced stealth, scaling the ivy-covered wall with the efficiency of one who had studied both architecture and escape routes with equal diligence. He reached Lyria's window in minutes, his gloved fingers finding purchase on ancient stonework worn smooth by centuries of rain. "Your Grace," Lyria whispered, relief flooding her voice as she pushed the window wider. "We have little time," he replied, swinging himself gracefully over the sill. His eyes swept the chamber, noting her lack of luggage. "You've prepared as instructed. Good." Dr. Whitmore administered a new sedative, she informed him urgently. "He expects me insensate by now. When they discover I'm not— They won't discover anything until we're well away." He extracted a small vial from his waistcoat pocket. "Drink this. It will counteract any residual effects from their concoctions." She hesitated only momentarily before accepting the medicine. The liquid tasted of bitter herbs, but its effect was immediate. Her thoughts, already clear from avoiding Whitmore's tincture, gained additional sharpness. "Can you climb down?" he asked, gesturing toward the window. "I scaled these walls as a child," she responded with quiet dignity. "I believe I can manage my own escape." He nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. "Mr. Bennet awaits with a carriage beyond the southern gate. We'll travel through the night to reach London by dawn." As Lyria moved toward the window, a soft knock at her door froze them both. "My lady," came Soren's urgent whisper, "Dr. Whitmore returns to check your condition." Calum gestured her toward the window. "Go. Begin the descent. I'll follow. And Soren, I've made arrangements for his safety." The knocking grew more insistent. Lyria grasped the window frame and swung herself outside with surprising agility, finding footholds in the ancient stonework. Calum followed, pausing only to whisper final instructions to Soren through the narrowing gap. "Deny all knowledge. The letter with your compensation is beneath the stable's loose floorboard. Disappear before morning." The door latch clicked as he pulled the window nearly closed behind him. Through the gap, they glimpsed Whitmore entering with a lantern, Soren trailing anxiously behind. "She should be completely subdued by now," the physician remarked, approaching the bed. He lifted his lantern, illuminating empty sheets. "What is this? Where is she?" Soren's performance was masterful, his face registering perfect shock. "She was here not 30 minutes ago, sir. I administered the tonic myself." Whitmore whirled toward the window, rushing to throw it open. By then, Lyria and Calum had descended beyond the lantern's reach, pressed against the manor's shadow-draped wall. "Sound the alarm!" Whitmore shouted. "Lady Marwen must be notified immediately. The mad woman has escaped." Bells began to clang throughout Thornwyke Hall as Calum guided Lyria through the fog-laden gardens, away from the commotion. They moved swiftly through sculpted hedgerows, now transformed into looming spectres by the mist. following a path known only to Caleb's carefully memorized maps. "They'll search the main roads," he murmured, as they reached the estate's southern boundary. "We'll travel through Featherstone Wood, a longer route but one they won't expect." As predicted, Bennett awaited with a nondescript carriage, its lanterns unlit. The secretary's eyebrows rose fractionally at Lyria's bedraggled appearance, but he made no comment as he assisted her inside. "The documents are prepared?" Caleb inquired, glancing back toward the distant manor where lights now blazed from every window. "Awaiting your signature in London, Your Grace." Bennett handed him a sealed packet, "and the special license has been arranged, as requested." Lyria's head turned sharply. "Special license? What manner of document have you—" Her question dissolved into a gasp as shouts echoed from the direction of the estate. Lanterns bobbed through the fog, a search party advancing rapidly. "Explanations must wait," Caleb stated, leaping into the carriage. "Drive, Bennett. Make for the London road through Featherstone." The carriage lurched forward, wheels crunching on gravel before finding purchase on softer earth. Inside, Lyria braced herself against the swaying motion, her copper wire twist clutched tightly in white-knuckled fingers. "You mentioned a special license," she persisted, once they had put sufficient distance between themselves and their pursuers. "I would know what arrangements you've made regarding my person." In the dimness, Caleb's expression remained unreadable. "A marriage license." "Marriage?" Shock rendered her momentarily speechless before indignation flooded her voice. "You presume rather extensively, Your Grace." "It is not presumption but pragmatism," he corrected, his tone maddeningly reasonable. "Consider our situation logically. You have been declared mentally incompetent. Your stepmother controls your legal affairs. Any attempt to challenge her will be dismissed unless I have a husband to speak for me," she finished bitterly, exchanging one controller for another. How thoroughly modern. "Not a controller," he countered. "An ally with the legal standing to demand examination of Lady Marwyn's claims and actions." The carriage hit a particularly deep rut, throwing them momentarily together before they separated with matching awkwardness. "And once my name is cleared," she demanded, "what then? Will you graciously dissolve our arrangement?" Silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the steady rhythm of hooves and wheels. "That," he finally replied, "would be entirely your decision." For the remainder of their journey through the night-shrouded countryside, they spoke little. Lyria retreated into contemplation, weighing captivity against a marriage of convenience with equal wariness. Caleb maintained respectful distance, though his gaze occasionally sought her profile in the dimness, his expression suggesting calculations extending far beyond their immediate circumstances. By the time dawn painted the eastern sky with pale light, London's outskirts emerged through dissipating fog. The city sprawled before them, both sanctuary and battleground, for the confrontation to come. "We proceed directly to the magistrate," Caleb informed her as they crossed Blackfriars Bridge. "My solicitor will meet us there with the necessary documentation." Lyria straightened her posture, smoothing her rumpled garments with dignity that transcended their condition. "Before we enter London society, Your Grace, I require your solemn word on one matter." "Name it." "This arrangement between us, this marriage of legal convenience, remains unconsummated until I choose otherwise." Her gaze met his unflinchingly. "I have had quite enough of my body and mind being controlled by others." His expression softened perceptibly. "Lady Lyria, I would sooner cut off my right hand than force intimacy where it is not freely given. You have my word, not merely as a duke but as a man who values choice above all possessions." Something in his tone, a raw honesty beneath the practiced courtesy, reassured her more than any formal oath could have. "Then I accept your solution," she replied quietly. "Let us face London together." The magistrate's office exuded the particular mustiness unique to rooms where legal pronouncements had accumulated like dust over centuries. Lyria stood beside Caleb before the imposing desk, her borrowed dress, hastily procured from Bennett's sister, marking her as respectable if not fashionable. The copper wire twist remained at her wrist, now partially concealed by gloves Caleb had thoughtfully provided. "I must emphasize the irregular nature of these proceedings," Magistrate Holloway stated, peering at them over spectacles that seemed permanently affixed to his nose. "A woman declared mentally incompetent, married by special license without familial consent. My consent is the only one legally required," Caleb interrupted smoothly. "And as her husband, I formally request a complete medical examination to challenge the previous certification of Lady Thornwyke's alleged condition." "Duke or not, Your Grace, These matters follow procedure, Holloway countered, though with noticeable deference. Lady Marwen remains her legal guardian according to current documentation. Documentation obtained through fraud, Lyria interjected, her voice steady despite the indignation coloring her cheeks. I was systematically drugged to create the appearance of instability. The magistrate's eyebrows rose fractionally. Serious accusations, my lady. With evidence to support them. Calum nodded to his solicitor, who placed a leather portfolio on the desk. Sworn statements from Thornwyke Hall staff regarding the administration of unnecessary sedatives, chemical analysis of substances found in Lady Lyria's chambers, financial records showing payments to 3 physicians who never personally examined her. Holloway leafed through the documents, his expression growing increasingly troubled. These allegations, if proven, constitute most grievous misconduct. We intend to prove them conclusively, Calum stated, before the Royal College of Physicians and, if necessary, Parliament itself. The magistrate removed his spectacles, polishing them methodically while considering the matter. I cannot simply overturn established legal guardianship without proper examination regardless of these documents. He replaced his spectacles, decision apparently reached. However, given the unusual circumstances and the prominence of the parties involved, I shall authorize an independent medical assessment. Until such examination is complete, the Duke of Gravenwell's status as husband grants him temporary precedence in matters concerning Lady Lyria. When will this examination take place? Lyria inquired, anxiety edging her voice. This afternoon, Calum answered before Holloway could respond. I've arranged for Sir James Prescott of the Royal College to conduct the evaluation at my London residence. The magistrate's eyebrows climbed higher. Sir James. Most impressive, Your Grace. His testimony carries considerable weight. As they departed the magistrate's office, a commotion in the outer chamber drew their attention. Lady Marwen burst through the doors, her travelling clothes suggesting a hasty journey from Hampshire. Dr. Whitmore followed close behind, his expression thunderous. There she is, Lady Marwen exclaimed, pointing an accusatory finger at Lyria. My poor deluded stepdaughter abducted from medical care. Calum stepped forward, positioning himself between the women. Your concern arrives remarkably quickly, Lady Marwen. One might almost suspect you maintained closer surveillance than your trip to Hampshire would allow. Lady Marwen's gaze darted between them before settling on the magistrate. Sir, I demand the immediate return of my ward. She requires specialized treatment. Your ward, madam, is now legally wed, Holloway interrupted, gesturing toward the documents on his desk. The Duke of Gravenwell has exercised his right to a special license. The blood drained from Lady Marwen's face. Married? Impossible. She cannot legally consent. She is not of sound mind. An assertion we challenge categorically, Calum replied coldly. Sir James Prescott will conduct a thorough examination this afternoon. I suggest you prepare your evidence and your conscience for what will surely follow. This is abduction, Whitmore interjected, stepping forward. A clear case of taking advantage of an unstable mind for what purpose exactly, Doctor? Lyria's voice cut through his bluster like a blade. What possible advantage could the Duke of Gravenwell, one of England's wealthiest nobles, gain from marrying a woman you've declared mad? Perhaps you might explain that to the magistrate, along with explaining these. She withdrew a small envelope from her pocket, emptying several dried leaves onto the desk. Specimens from my medicinal tea, which I've preserved over months. I believe chemical analysis will prove most enlightening regarding your treatments. Whitmore's face contorted with poorly concealed alarm. Those are standard calming agents, nothing more. We shall see. Calum's smile contained no warmth. The laboratory results should be ready by tomorrow morning. Fascinating timing, as I've also arranged for the Times to report on innovative treatments for fabricated madness. Lady Marwen stepped backward, composure visibly cracking. You cannot possibly believe the ravings of— I believe evidence, madam, Calum interrupted. High quality seemingly in short supply during your guardianship. The magistrate cleared his throat. Given the serious nature of these conflicting claims, I am scheduling a formal hearing 3 days hence. Until then, Lady Lyria remains under her husband's protection. Lady Marwen, you and Dr. Whitmore will make yourselves available for questioning. He fixed them with a pointed stare. I strongly advise against leaving London. Outside the magistrate's office, Lady Marwen attempted one final confrontation, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. This changes nothing. No one will believe a woman who spent months in treatment for delusions. One marriage won't erase the testimonies of respected physicians. Perhaps not, Lyria responded with newfound confidence, but it grants me what you tried so desperately to prevent, a voice that must be heard. Calum escorted Lyria to his waiting carriage, maintaining a protective proximity without physical contact. As they pulled away, she finally released the tension that had sustained her, shoulders sagging with momentary exhaustion. The first battle only, Calum cautioned gently. Lady Marwen will rally her allies. The examination with Sir James must be beyond reproach. Lyria nodded, straightening once more. I've spent months preparing for precisely this moment. One afternoon of questions holds no terror after what I've endured. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. I never doubted your fortitude, Lady Lyria. It is perhaps what I most— He stopped abruptly, recalibrating his words. What I most respect about your character. The unfinished thought lingered between them as the carriage wove through London's crowded streets toward Gravenwell House, where the next phase of their calculated gambit awaited. Gravenwell House stood as a testament to generations of aristocratic restraint, imposing without ostentation, commanding respect through elegant proportions rather than excessive ornamentation. Footmen in somber livery received them at the entrance, their faces betraying only momentary surprise at Lyria's disheveled state before their training reasserted itself. Prepare the blue suite for her grace, Calum instructed the housekeeper, who materialized silently in the entrance hall, and send for Madame Beaumont immediately. The Duchess requires a complete wardrobe appropriate to her station. The title, Duchess, sent an unexpected tremor through Lyria. The marriage had been clinical, pragmatic, a legal maneuver rather than an emotional union, yet hearing herself referred to with such certainty jolted her newly precarious reality. Sir James arrives at 3, Calum continued, consulting his pocket watch. Ensure refreshments are prepared in the library. We'll conduct the examination there. Very good, Your Grace, the housekeeper replied, her curious gaze flickering briefly toward Lyria before she departed with practiced efficiency. Left momentarily alone in the magnificent entrance hall, Lyria found herself studying her husband. In the clear light of day, away from Thornwyke's shadows and the magistrate's office, Calum Hartwell presented a figure both familiar and startlingly unknown. His aristocratic features carried the sharp precision of a man accustomed to authority, yet something softer lingered at the corners of his eyes, evidence perhaps of compassion, carefully rationed. Your household seems remarkably unperturbed by my sudden appearance, she observed. A hint of amusement touched his expression. Gravenwell staff are selected for discretion above all qualities. Were I to arrive with a Bengal tiger, they would merely inquire about its dietary preferences. And is that how you regard me? As some exotic creature you've acquired? Hardly. His tone sharpened slightly. I regard you as a woman of extraordinary intellect who has suffered unconscionable treatment, a woman deserving justice and restoration of her rightful place. The arrival of Madame Beaumont, a formidable Frenchwoman who commanded fabric and scissors like military operations, interrupted further conversation. Lyria found herself whisked away to the blue suite, where an army of seamstresses descended with measuring tapes and fabric swatches. For immediate necessity, Madame pronounced, evaluating Lyria with professional detachment, we shall alter 3 of the previous Duchess's day dresses, similar proportions, though we must accommodate a more youthful silhouette. The remainder we shall create anew. Previous Duchess? Lyria inquired, startled. I was unaware His Grace had been married before. Madame Beaumont's expression revealed nothing. His mother's garments, mademoiselle, preserved in excellent condition. The Duke has never taken a wife until now. While Lyria submitted to the ministrations of Madame's assistants, her mind catalogued this new information. Calum had never married, despite his position surely demanding heirs. Why? And why choose her, beyond the immediate legal advantage? By 2:30, Lyria emerged transformed. The borrowed dress had been replaced by a gown of midnight blue silk, its elegance understated yet undeniable. Her hair, washed and properly dressed, now framed her face in soft waves, rather than the tangled disarray of her escape. The copper wire twist remained at her wrist, polished to a gleam but otherwise unaltered, her one insistence among the flurry of changes. Calum awaited her in the library, conferring quietly with Bennett over documents spread across a mahogany desk. He looked up at her entrance, momentary surprise registering in his expression before he mastered it. You look, he began, then seemed to recalculate his response. Entirely yourself again, Lady Lyria. Not entirely, she corrected, approaching the desk. I am apparently a duchess now, according to your staff. A necessary legal fiction, he reminded her, though something in his tone had softened. Though I must acknowledge it suits you remarkably well. Before she could respond, the butler announced Sir James Prescott's arrival. The physician entered with the confident bearing of a man secure in both his reputation and abilities, white-haired, broad-shouldered, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to diagnose from first glance. "Your Grace," he greeted Calum with a respectful nod before turning his attention to Lyria. "And this must be the lady whose sanity I am to evaluate. A pleasure, Your Grace." "The pleasure is mine, Sir James," she replied, meeting his gaze directly, "though I confess the circumstances are less than ideal." "Indeed," he gestured toward the arrangement of chairs near the fireplace. "Shall we proceed? I prefer conversation to clinical examination in such matters. The mind reveals itself most honestly through natural discourse." For the next 2 hours, Sir James engaged Lyria in discussions ranging from literature to mathematics, from estate management to political philosophy. He presented logical puzzles, requested memory recollections, and observed her emotional responses to various provocative statements. Throughout, Calum remained present but silent, his expression betraying nothing while Sir James made occasional notes. "Lady Lyria," Sir James finally said, setting aside his notebook, "would you be so kind as to describe the events leading to your confinement at Thornwyke Hall?" She recounted the progression with clinical precision: her father's death, Lady Marwyn's gradual isolation tactics, the carefully orchestrated public episodes, the increasing sedation, the systematic gaslighting, "And the copper wire you wear," Sir James nodded toward her wrist. "What significance does it hold?" "My father was an inventor," she explained, touching the twist gently. "This was his final creation, a conductor designed for his resonating engine. He believed it would revolutionize industrial machinery, allowing for greater efficiency with minimal fuel consumption." "An impressive legacy," Sir James commented. "And the complete designs?" "Encoded in a cipher only I can translate," she confirmed. "Lady Marwyn wanted access to these designs. They represent considerable fortune and industrial advantage." Sir James closed his notebook with a decisive snap. "Your Grace," he addressed Calum, "I have conducted hundreds of evaluations during my career. I can state unequivocally that Lady Lyria possesses not only sound mind, but remarkable intellect. Whatever episodes were documented by her previous physicians were either fabricated or chemically induced." Relief washed over Lyria's features. "You'll testify to this at the hearing?" "With absolute certainty," Sir James confirmed, rising to his feet. "I shall prepare my formal report immediately. The Royal College does not look kindly upon physicians who abuse their position to falsify conditions, particularly for financial gain." After Sir James departed, Lyria remained motionless, the magnitude of this first victory settling over her like a physical weight. "He believed me," she whispered, more to herself than Calum. "After months of being told my own perceptions were delusions. The truth has a resonance that falsehood cannot maintain," Calum observed, pouring her a glass of sherry. "Sir James's testimony will sway the magistrate considerably, but Lady Marwyn still has significant social influence. We must prepare for the public confrontation to come." Lyria accepted the glass, studying the amber liquid's refraction of firelight. "I've spent months preparing my defense in isolation, yet now faced with actual freedom, I find myself—" She hesitated, searching for the appropriate term, "uncertain of my footing." "Understandable," he replied, maintaining a respectful distance as he took the seat opposite hers. "You've been denied agency for so long that its sudden return overwhelms." "Not overwhelms," she corrected gently. "Reorients. I had resigned myself to fighting alone from within my prison. Having an ally, especially one of your position, changes the battlefield entirely." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the gentle ticking of the library clock and the occasional crackle from the hearth. Outside, London continued its eternal bustle, unaware that within these walls a strategy was forming that would soon command the attention of every drawing room in Mayfair. "Tomorrow," Calum finally stated, "we make our first public appearance. Lady Marwyn has spread her version of events throughout society for months. It's time London witnessed the woman behind the rumours." "Where?" Lyria asked, her fingers instinctively finding the copper wire at her wrist. "The Royal Society's exhibition at Somerset House." His expression suggested careful calculation. "Your father was a member, was he not?" "He was," she confirmed, understanding dawning. "His colleagues would recognize me, and perhaps the significance of his final work." Precisely. Calem's eyes held a glimmer of admiration. We begin reclaiming your narrative where it matters most, among those who understood your father's genius and, by extension, might recognize yours. As darkness settled over London, Lyria retired to the Blue Suite, her mind whirling with strategies and contingencies. Tomorrow would mark her re-entry into a society that had accepted her madness as convenient truth. The magistrate's hearing remained 3 days away, but the court of public opinion would render its preliminary judgment much sooner. Across the corridor, in his own chambers, Calem reviewed their legal position with Bennett, voice lowered, despite thick walls. Ensure the financial investigations are complete before the hearing. I want every questionable transaction documented. And regarding the marriage, Your Grace, Bennett inquired delicately, should arrangements be made for its eventual dissolution once Lady Lyria's status is restored? Calem's expression remained carefully neutral. That decision belongs to her alone. For now, our focus remains on the immediate battle. Yet, as he stood at his window overlooking London's lamplit streets, his thoughts strayed beyond strategy to the woman whose courage had drawn him into this conflict, a woman who had maintained her brilliance despite every effort to diminish it. Somerset House stood proud against the pale morning sky, its neoclassical facade drawing London's scientific elite to the Royal Society's exhibition. Carriages lined the courtyard as Calem handed Lyria down from their own conveyance, her appearance causing footmen to straighten with additional attentiveness. She wore a gown of deep emerald silk, a colour deliberately chosen to complement the copper wire twist, now fashioned into a decorative bracelet, its industrial origins transformed into a statement piece. "Remember," Calem murmured as they approached the entrance, "we are not here to defend. You need not explain your absence or justify your presence. You are the Duchess of Gravenwell, attending an exhibition relevant to your father's work." Lyria's grip tightened momentarily on his arm. "And when Lady Marwen's whispers reach the attendees, she has had months to cultivate her narrative. Then we allow truth its moment," he replied. "The soil has been prepared. Now we merely plant the seed." Their entrance created the exact ripple of attention Calem had anticipated. Conversations paused mid-sentence, glances darted between them and companions, fans fluttered with increased urgency. Lady Lyria Thornwyke, reportedly insane and confined, now appeared as the Duchess of Gravenwell, composed and elegant on the arm of one of England's most formidable peers. "Lord Huxley," Calem greeted an elderly gentleman examining a display of electrical equipment. "I believe you were acquainted with Sir Edmund Thornwyke." The white-haired scientist peered at them over brass-rimmed spectacles. "Indeed, a brilliant mind lost too soon. And this is—" Recognition dawned slowly. "Lady Lyria, my dear, we had heard you were indisposed. A misunderstanding recently rectified," Lyria responded with practiced ease. "I've continued my father's research during my absence from society." Huxley's eyebrows rose with interest. "The resonating engine? Edmund mentioned you assisted with his calculations?" "More than assisted," she corrected gently. "We developed the principles jointly. I still possess his final design notes." Their conversation attracted other members of the scientific community, each greeting Lyria with initial caution that gradually transformed into genuine engagement as her knowledge became evident. She sketched principles on exhibition programs, debated thermodynamic theories, and referenced obscure scientific texts with precise citation, each interaction eroding the foundations of Lady Marwen's carefully constructed narrative. Across the exhibition hall, the whispers changed tenor. "Can that possibly be madness?" one gentleman murmured to his companion. "I've never heard lunacy discuss Faraday's principles with such clarity." Calem maintained a watchful presence, intervening only when necessary to introduce another significant acquaintance. His strategy unfolded exactly as planned, not defending Lyria's sanity, but simply creating circumstances where it demonstrated itself beyond question. "Your Grace," a sharp voice interrupted their conversation with Professor Whitcomb. Lady Marwen approached, her face arranged in a mask of concern beneath a fashionable bonnet. "What an unexpected appearance." "Lady Marwen," Calem acknowledged with cold courtesy, "your concern for your stepdaughter's welfare is admirable, though perhaps misplaced, given Sir James Prescott's definitive evaluation yesterday." Colour rose in her cheeks. "One physician's opinion hardly overturns established medical consensus. When that physician is president of the Royal College, it rather does," he countered smoothly, particularly when the previous diagnoses were procured through financial incentives rather than examination. The surrounding scientists exchanged glances, their professional interest piqued by this conflict of medical authority. "Lady Lyria," Professor Whitcomb interjected, seemingly oblivious to the tension, "you mentioned your father's variable conductor design. I've been attempting similar principles with limited success. Perhaps you might elaborate on your approach." Lyria seized the opportunity with graceful precision. "Of course, the key lies in the copper wire construction, specifically the twisted configuration that reduces resistance while maintaining flexibility." She extended her wrist, displaying the copper twist. "This prototype demonstrates the principle. When incorporated into the resonating engine, it increases efficiency by nearly 40%. "Extraordinary," Whitcomb breathed, examining the simple yet elegant design. "And you've calculated the full implementation?" "I have," she confirmed. "The complete equations are preserved in my father's cipher." Lady Marwen's expression darkened. Imaginary ciphers and fanciful engines, precisely the delusions that concerned her physicians. "Delusions," Whitcomb echoed, confusion evident. "Madam, I assure you these principles are sound. Sir Edmund presented preliminary findings before his death. If Lady Lyria has preserved his final work, she has," Calum confirmed, "and intends to establish the Thornwyke Foundation to develop these innovations once certain legal impediments are removed." The implication hung in the air, clear to everyone present. Lady Marwen's control of the Thornwyke fortune had prevented not merely Lyria's freedom, but scientific advancement itself. "The magistrate's hearing will determine all matters," Lady Marwen stated coldly, retreating with as much dignity as she could muster. "Until then, I suggest restraint in making promises regarding assets not yet restored to your wife's control." After her departure, Lyria released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "She will not surrender easily. Nor should we expect her to," Calum replied. "But observe the room now." Lyria glanced around, noting how the scientists had clustered into discussion groups, many casting thoughtful looks in her direction. The whispers had transformed from scandal to scholarly interest, exactly as Calum had intended. "Public opinion shifts," he continued quietly. "By tomorrow, drawing rooms across London will debate not your sanity, but whether your father's final invention might revolutionize industrial efficiency." "A masterful redirection," she acknowledged, genuine admiration coloring her voice. "Though I sense Lady Marwen will attempt one final desperate maneuver before the hearing." "Undoubtedly." His hand covered hers briefly, where it rested on his arm. "Which is why we must accelerate our own." As they departed Somerset House, multiple scientists approached to arrange future consultations regarding the resonating engine. Each interaction reinforced Lyria's intellectual authority and, by extension, undermined any suggestion of mental instability. Their carriage had barely departed when Calum outlined the next phase. "This afternoon, we visit your father's solicitor. I've arranged for him to review the guardianship documents and financial records from Thornwyke Estate." "Mr. Pemberton," Lyria's expression brightened. "He always questioned my supposed condition, though Lady Marwen prevented his visits." "And with good reason," Calum confirmed. "My investigators discovered discrepancies in the estate accounts, substantial sums transferred to offshore holdings. Pemberton's testimony, combined with these financial irregularities, would constitute not merely medical malpractice, but criminal fraud," she finished, the implications crystallizing. Lady Marwen wouldn't merely lose guardianship, she could face prosecution. His smile held grim satisfaction. "Precisely." As London passed beyond the carriage windows, Lyria studied the man beside her with renewed perspective. The Duke of Gravenwell's reputation for cold precision had always seemed a product of aristocratic detachment. Now she recognized it as something else entirely, strategic brilliance applied to moral purpose. "Why?" she asked suddenly. "Why invest such effort in a stranger's cause?" Calum's gaze met hers, something unreadable flickering in its depths. "Perhaps I recognized in your imprisonment a reflection of constraints less visible but equally binding." Before she could pursue this cryptic response, the carriage arrived at their next destination, where the legal dismantling of Lady Marwen's carefully constructed facade would begin in earnest. The magistrate's chamber hummed with tension as London's elite crowded the public gallery. 3 days of strategic appearances, carefully placed newspaper articles, and legal preparations had culminated in this moment. a hearing that had transformed from routine guardianship confirmation into the most discussed legal proceeding of the season. Lyria sat beside Calum at the petitioner's table, her posture regal despite the nervous energy radiating from her tightly clasped hands. Across the aisle, Lady Marwen conferred urgently with her solicitors, her expression betraying the first genuine anxiety Lyria had observed in her stepmother's carefully controlled demeanour. "All rise for Magistrate Holloway," the clerk announced, prompting the assembly to stand as the official entered in formal robes. "Be seated," Holloway instructed, adjusting his spectacles as he surveyed the crowded chamber. "We address today the petition of Calum Hartwell, Duke of Gravenwell, regarding the guardianship of his wife, formerly Lady Lyria Thornwyke, previously under the legal protection of Lady Marwen Thornwyke, due to certified mental incompetence." Murmurs rippled through the gallery as Holloway continued. "This court has received substantial documentation challenging both the medical assessment and financial administration of said guardianship. We shall proceed with testimony from relevant parties." Sir James Prescott was called first, his imposing presence commanding immediate attention as he took the witness stand. "Sir James," Holloway began, "you conducted an independent evaluation of Lady Lyria's mental condition. Please share your professional assessment." "I found Lady Lyria to be of exceptionally sound mind," Sir James stated unequivocally. "Her intellectual capacity exceeds that of most individuals I have examined. There exists no medical justification whatsoever for declaring her incompetent." Lady Marwen's solicitor rose immediately. "Yet 3 respected physicians certified her condition, Sir James. Are you suggesting a conspiracy among medical professionals?" "I am stating a medical conclusion," Sir James replied firmly. "As for conspiracy, that determination lies beyond my professional scope. However," he added, extracting papers from his coat, "I have analyzed samples of substances administered to Lady Lyria during her confinement. They contain concentrated laudanum and other sedatives in quantities sufficient to induce symptoms resembling mental instability." The gallery erupted in shocked whispers as Holloway called for order. "Further," Sir James continued when silence returned, "I examined the original medical certifications. None indicates direct examination of Lady Lyria, merely assessment of symptoms as reported by the Guardian. This violates fundamental protocols for competency evaluation." Lady Marwen's complexion had paled visibly as Mr. Pemberton, Sir Edmund's solicitor, took the stand next. His testimony regarding financial irregularities proved equally damning. "To approximately £68,000, he stated, referencing ledgers spread before him, transferred from Thornwyke Holdings to accounts in Switzerland and the Ottoman Empire, all following Sir Edmund's death and Lady Lyria's alleged decline." "And who authorized these transfers?" Holloway inquired. "Lady Marwen Thornwyke," Pemberton confirmed, "using powers granted through the guardianship arrangement. Furthermore, I have documentation proving she actively prevented me from consulting with Lady Lyria, despite my responsibilities as executor of Sir Edmund's will." By midday, the weight of evidence had shifted the atmosphere in the chamber. Lady Marwen's solicitors appeared increasingly uncomfortable, exchanging worried glances as testimony mounted. When Lyria herself was called to testify, a hush fell over the assembly. She rose with quiet dignity, the copper wire twist catching light at her wrist as she took the oath. "Lady Lyria," Holloway began. "Duchess of Gravenwell," she corrected gently, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Indeed, Your Grace," the magistrate acknowledged. "Please describe the circumstances leading to your confinement at Thornwyke Hall." With measured clarity, Lyria recounted the progression of events following her father's death, Lady Marwen's gradual isolation tactics, the manipulated public episodes, the increasing sedation, and the systematic attempts to access Sir Edmund's final invention. The resonating engine represented not merely scientific advancement, but considerable fortune, she explained. "My father entrusted the final designs to me alone, encoded in a cipher only I could translate. Lady Marwen required my cooperation, or control of my legal affairs through guardianship." "And these designs," Holloway inquired, "you can verify their existence and your ability to implement them?" "The Royal Society has already established a committee to review my father's work," she confirmed. "Professor Whitcomb chairs the evaluation, with initial findings supporting both the theoretical principles and practical applications." When cross-examination began, Lady Marwen's solicitor attempted to undermine Lyria's credibility through reference to her confinement. "If you were truly of sound mind," he challenged, "how did you allow yourself to be imprisoned for months?" Why not escape earlier? I attempted to convey my situation to visitors, Lyria responded evenly. Each was carefully screened or denied access entirely. As for escape, the north wing windows were barred, my food and drink sedated, and servants instructed that any episode justified immediate restraint. She met his gaze directly. When opportunity finally presented itself, I did indeed escape, as evidenced by my presence here today. By late afternoon, Lady Marwyn herself took the stand, her composure visibly fracturing under Holloway's direct questioning. "Did you at any point," the magistrate inquired, "instruct Dr. Whitmore to administer substances to Lady Lyria without her knowledge or consent?" "Medical treatments," Lady Marwyn insisted, "for her own protection. Her father's death triggered delusional episodes. Episodes no independent physician has observed," Holloway interrupted. "Episodes remarkably convenient for securing control of the Thornwyke fortune and patents." When Lady Marwyn's testimony concluded, Holloway called a brief recess before rendering his judgment. The gallery buzzed with speculation as Lyria and Kylam conferred quietly at their table. "She's desperate," Lyria observed, noting how Lady Marwyn whispered urgently with her solicitors. "The financial evidence has taken her by surprise." Kylam nodded slightly. "Pemberton exceeded expectations. The foreign accounts provide motive beyond what we initially established." When Holloway returned, the chamber fell silent in anticipation. The magistrate's expression had shifted from judicial neutrality to something approximating controlled indignation. "Having reviewed all testimony and evidence," he began, "this court finds the guardianship of Lady Lyria Thornwyke, now Duchess of Gravenwell, to have been established through fraudulent means and maintained through unconscionable practices." Relief washed over Lyria's features as Holloway continued. "The guardianship is hereby dissolved with immediate effect. All Thornwyke assets are to be returned to the Duchess's control forthwith." He turned his attention to Lady Marwyn, whose face had drained of colour. "Furthermore, given the substantial evidence of financial impropriety and medical malfeasance, I am referring this matter to the Crown Prosecutor for criminal investigation." The gallery erupted in exclamations as Lady Marwyn swayed slightly, gripping the table before her. Dr. Whitmore, seated nearby, appeared equally shaken by this unexpected development. "Court officers," Holloway instructed, "will escort Lady Marwyn and Dr. Whitmore to separate chambers for preliminary questioning by the prosecutor's office. Their passports will be surrendered pending investigation." As Lady Marwyn was led from the chamber, her gaze locked briefly with Lyria's, hatred mingling with something akin to disbelief that her carefully constructed dominance had collapsed so completely. Outside the magistrate's court, reporters from London's major newspapers clamoured for statements. Kylam guided Lyria through the crowd with protective efficiency, pausing only briefly at the carriage door. "Justice has been served today," he stated for the assembled press. "The Duchess will issue a formal statement regarding the Thornwyke Foundation and the development of her father's scientific work tomorrow. For now, we request privacy as she reclaims what was wrongfully taken." As their carriage pulled away from the courthouse, Lyria finally allowed herself to release the composure she had maintained throughout the proceedings. Tears, not of sorrow, but of relief and vindication, traced silent paths down her cheeks. "It's over," she whispered, half in disbelief. "Truly over." Kylam reached across the carriage to take her hand, his touch gentle yet grounding. "The legal battle, yes. The restoration of your reputation has only begun." "But begun with unprecedented momentum," she noted, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief he silently offered. "Your strategy was remarkable." "The strategy merely provided structure," he corrected. "Your courage and brilliance provided substance. Without those, no legal maneuver would have succeeded." As London passed beyond the carriage windows, transformed now from battleground to kingdom restored, Lyria studied the man beside her, the husband of convenience, whose actions had proven anything but convenient. "Our arrangement," she began carefully, "the marriage that secured my legal standing, remains entirely at your discretion," he completed smoothly, though something in his expression suggested controlled emotion beneath the practiced calm. "As promised, you determine its future now that its immediate purpose is fulfilled." Before she could respond, the carriage arrived at Gravenwell House, where staff awaited with congratulations, carefully balanced against professional reserve. The conversation and decision would need to wait for a more private moment. That evening, celebration dinner completed and household retired, Lyria found herself in the library where their journey toward justice had begun. Kylam joined her shortly, 2 glasses of amber liquid in hand. "To freedom restored," he offered, extending one to her. "To unexpected allies," she countered, accepting the glass, "and arrangements more complex than initially presented." His eyebrow rose slightly. "Complex?" "Indeed." Lyria set her glass aside, gathering courage for what had gradually become clear throughout their shared battle. "For a marriage of convenience seems to have developed most inconvenient complications." "Such as?" His voice remained steady, though something in his posture suggested heightened attention. "I find myself," she replied carefully, "contemplating its continuation for purposes entirely unrelated to legal standing or societal protection." Understanding dawned in his expression, closely followed by something she had glimpsed only in unguarded moments, a warmth at odds with his public persona. "I would hear these purposes articulated," he requested softly, "to ensure no misunderstanding exists between us." Lyria stepped closer, the copper wire twist catching firelight at her wrist. "I believe, Your Grace, that what began as strategic alliance has revealed a compatibility I neither anticipated nor wished to relinquish." "Compatibility," he echoed, setting his own glass aside, "a rather clinical term for what I suspect we both acknowledge." "Then perhaps," she suggested, her voice gaining confidence, "we might explore more suitable terminology, as husband and wife in truth, rather than merely documentation." His hand reached for hers, fingers intertwining with deliberate gentleness. "I would welcome such exploration, Lyria, for I too have discovered that what began as duty has transformed into something far more profound." As the library fire cast dancing shadows across leather-bound volumes and polished wood, the Duke and Duchess of Gravenwell sealed their newly defined understanding with a kiss that contained neither strategy nor calculation, only the promise of a shared future built upon foundations stronger than convenience could ever provide. Spring sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Thornwyke Hall's north wing, transforming what had once been Lyria's prison into the bustling headquarters of the Thornwyke Foundation. Where silence and isolation had reigned, engineers and scientists now moved purposefully among workbenches and drafting tables, their excited conversations creating a symphony of intellectual engagement that would have delighted Sir Edmund beyond measure. 6 months had passed since the magistrate's judgment. Lady Marwyn awaited trial in Newgate, her financial schemes unravelled by Treasury investigators who had discovered embezzlement extending well beyond the Thornwyke estate. Dr. Whitmore had fled to the continent, only to be apprehended in Brussels and returned to face charges of medical malpractice and criminal conspiracy. London society, ever adaptable to changing fortunes, had swiftly realigned itself to celebrate the miraculous recovery of the Duchess of Gravenwell, conveniently forgetting their earlier acceptance of whispered calumnies. "Your Grace," Professor Whitcomb called, beckoning Lyria toward a large apparatus dominating the center of the laboratory. "The modified conductor performs precisely as you predicted. Efficiency increased by 43% in our latest trials." Lyria approached, the copper wire twist, now fashioned into an elegant bracelet, still encircling her wrist as she examined the readings. "Excellent. Have you adjusted for the thermal expansion variant we discussed?" "Implemented this morning," he confirmed, his expression reflecting the unique satisfaction of scientific validation. "The committee recommends proceeding to industrial-scale testing immediately." As she reviewed the data with Whitcomb, Lyria maintained awareness of the tall figure observing from the doorway, Calum, whose silent support remained constant even as their relationship had evolved beyond its pragmatic beginnings. She caught his eye briefly, the private smile they exchanged containing months of shared understanding. Later, as they walked the grounds of the estate that had witnessed both her imprisonment and liberation, Lyria reflected on the transformation that extended beyond Thornwyke Hall to her own life. "The factory construction begins next month," she informed him, her arm linked comfortably through his. "The Royal Society's Investment Committee approved the final funding yesterday. Your father would be immensely proud," Calum observed, his formal public reserve softened in these private moments. "Not merely of the invention's success, but of how you've transformed his legacy." "Our legacy now," she corrected gently. "The Gravenwell investments provided the foundation upon which everything else built." They paused beside the garden, where spring flowers pushed defiantly through soil once neglected during Lady Marwyn's tenure. Like Lyria herself, the grounds had reclaimed their natural vitality once harmful influences were removed. "I received correspondence from Mr. Bennett this morning," Calum mentioned, his tone carefully neutral, The renovation plans for the East Wing await your approval. Lyria turned to face him directly, searching his expression for the unspoken question beneath this seemingly mundane statement. The East Wing renovations represented more than architectural modifications. They symbolized a decision regarding their permanent residence. "I've been considering our arrangement," she began, echoing the careful phrasing they had used during those early uncertain days. "The convenience of dividing our time between London and Thornwyke has served us well these past months." "Indeed," he agreed, though something in his eyes suggested he awaited her true meaning. "However," she continued, reaching for his hand with newfound confidence, "I find myself contemplating a more permanent arrangement, one centered here, at Thornwyke." Understanding dawned in his expression. "You wish to make this our primary residence?" "I wish to transform what was once my prison into our home," she clarified, her voice strengthening, "to replace painful memories with new ones of our creation. The Foundation's work continues regardless, but, he prompted gently when she hesitated, "there are considerations beyond scientific advancement that might benefit from our establishing roots here." Her hand moved instinctively to rest against her abdomen, a gesture whose significance did not escape his notice. His composure, legendary throughout London for its unflappable quality, faltered visibly. "Lyria, are you saying the Thornwyke Gravenwell legacy requires an heir?" she confirmed, joy illuminating her features. "According to Dr. Reynolds, we might expect such an arrival in approximately 7 months. The transformation of Caelim's expression, from shock to wonder to profound joy, would have astonished London society, accustomed as they were to the Duke's legendary reserve. Yet here, private from judging eyes, he gathered his wife into an embrace that expressed what formal language could not. "You continue to astonish me," he murmured against her hair. "When I arranged our marriage of convenience, I never imagined that convenience would yield to something infinitely more valuable," she completed, drawing back to meet his gaze. "Perhaps that transformation was written into our arrangement from the beginning, recognized by our minds long after our hearts had determined its course." As they continued their walk through gardens awakening from winter's grip, Soren, now elevated to head of household staff, approached with respectful urgency. "Your Graces," he announced, "Professor Whitcomb requests your presence in the laboratory. The final calibration requires the Duchess's approval before implementation." They returned to the North Wing, where the resonating engine, Sir Edmund's final creation completed through his daughter's brilliance, hummed with potential energy. The copper conductor, fashioned after the twist Lyria still wore at her wrist, channeled power with unprecedented efficiency. "We await your command, Your Grace," Whitcomb stated, gesturing toward the activation mechanism. Lyria turned to Caelim, extending her hand. "Together, I think, for some achievements belong not to one mind, but to the alignment of shared purpose." As they jointly engaged the mechanism, the engine's resonant hum deepened, gathering power without the excessive fuel consumption that had limited previous designs. Gauges registered performance far exceeding theoretical projections as the scientists exchanged glances of vindication and triumph. "Success, Your Graces," Whitcomb announced, unable to contain his professional excitement. "The Thornwyke resonating engine functions at 118% of projected efficiency. This will revolutionize industrial power generation throughout the Empire." Later that evening, after celebrations had concluded and the household settled into night's quietude, Lyria and Caelim stood upon the balcony of what had once been her father's observatory. Stars scattered across the spring sky like diamonds on midnight velvet, bearing silent witness to personal victory more profound than scientific achievement. "From prisoner to duchess to mother," Lyria mused, leaning comfortably against her husband's solid presence. "Life follows patterns more complex than any mathematical equation, yet with variables more rewarding than abstract theory," he added, his arm encircling her waist with protective tenderness. Below them, Thornwyke Hall stood illuminated by soft lamplight, no longer a prison but a sanctuary, no longer a site of suppression but a beacon of innovation. Within its walls, the legacy of Edmund Thornwyke would continue not merely through invention, but through the child who would inherit both his brilliance and the courage of the woman who had preserved it against overwhelming odds. "What shall we name the child?" Caelim asked, his voice gentled by contemplation of this unexpected future. Lyria smiled, her hand finding the copper twist at her wrist. The symbol that had sustained her through darkness now transformed into an emblem of continuity and hope. "Edmund for a boy," she suggested, "and for a girl." liberty. In the quiet of that spring night, as new life grew within the woman once branded mad to steal her fortune, justice found its most perfect expression not in courtroom vindication or social restoration, but in the simple freedom to determine one's own future, a freedom secured through courage, intelligence, and the unexpected discovery of love within a marriage begun as mere strategy. The stars witnessed their private acknowledgement of this transformation as the Duke and Duchess of Gravenwell sealed their shared future with a kiss that contained all the warmth, passion, and devotion that no document, no arrangement, no convenience could ever capture. Only the human heart, finally and truly free. In the shadows of oppression, truth remains a beacon that cannot be forever dimmed. Branded mad to steal her fortune reminds us that justice, though delayed, finds its path when courage meets opportunity and intellect joins with compassion. The story teaches us that our greatest prisons are often constructed not of stone and iron, but of others' perceptions and society's willingness to accept convenient falsehoods. Yet more profoundly, this tale illuminates how arrangements begun in cold calculation may bloom into genuine connection when walls of pretense fall away. Like Lyria's copper wire that transformed from a simple memento to a powerful conductor, human connections can evolve from utilitarian purpose to channels of profound emotional resonance. The greatest triumph is not merely the restoration of name or fortune, but the reclamation of one's authentic self and the discovery that true freedom lies in being fully known and still cherished. In this we find the deepest truth, that hearts once opened by necessity may remain open by choice, transforming convenient arrangements into life's most meaningful bonds. Did Lyria and Caelim's journey from strategic allies to true partners touch your heart? If you enjoyed this tale of injustice overcome and love discovered in the most unexpected of circumstances, please subscribe to our channel for more captivating Victorian romances delivered directly to you each week. What moment in their story resonated most deeply with you? Was it Lyria's steadfast resilience during her imprisonment, Caelim's strategic brilliance in orchestrating her vindication, or perhaps that tender revelation in the garden? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one and love hearing which characters and moments captured your imagination. Remember to like this video and share it with friends who appreciate stories of triumph, justice, and the transformative power of love. Your support helps our Victorian Romance Audio Stories channel continue bringing these timeless tales to life. With deepest appreciation from all of us at Victorian Romance Audio Stories, we thank you for joining us on this journey through the shadows of Thornwyke Hall to the light of justice and love. Until our next tale unfolds, may your days be bright and your evenings filled with stories that stir the soul.